And thank you all for joining us for Pando Days. My name is Eugene Shirley, and I'm the president of Pando Populous. We're here for the second of 4 Pando Days premier events stretching across this week. Today, we'll be hearing from the SCI-Arc, USC, and Woodbury teams. The challenge they're taking on, homelessness, with solutions for housing, hydration, hygiene, and summer cooling. Each team has explored the challenge in a different way. LA Skid Row is the challenge location. Our consulting partner is Los Angeles Deputy Mayor for Homelessness Initiatives, Jose Ramirez, whom we'll hear from shortly. Most of you joining this event today know we have a not so secret goal: to connect educators and their students to a big plan, the one that really matters. Los Angeles County Sustainability Plan, the boldest regional sustainability plan in the nation. With Pando Days, we aim to catalyze projects that offer innovative solutions to the problems facing the Southland, problems of shelter, transportation, community, food, and more. The good news, we're succeeding. 4 of last year's Pando Days projects were picked up by outside funders. To date, 12 colleges and universities from across Southern California have participated, 21 separate projects. Now here's the best news. You're seeing the results of Pando Days 21 premiered for you this week, coming from participating colleges and universities that have dedicated full courses, studios, or labs to this work. Then on January 16, we hope you all will join us for the conclusion of the Pando Days 21 season with our online finale. At the finale, we'll celebrate all the projects and learn what the judges think and where they would like to direct cash prizes. You'll also hear from our collaborating partners about the plans they have for helping to move the best projects forward. So let's get started. I'm delighted that Los Angeles Deputy Mayor Ramirez is here with us today. He carries the specific brief of homelessness initiatives for the city. Deputy Mayor, thank you so much for your Pando Days involvement. I know today's challenge focuses at the heart, not only of your work, but also of your longtime passions. Please say a few words and set up the critical importance of this challenge for us and why meeting it is essential to creating the sustainable and regenerative future that we're all aiming to build. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Eugene. I appreciate it. Happy to be here with all of you. Hoping you're having a good morning and afternoon. Excited to be here and hear some of these presentations and ideas that many of you have been working on for some time. I'm Deputy Mayor Jose Ramirez. I've been in my role with the mayor's office overseeing homelessness initiatives for almost a little over a year now. Prior to that, I spent 20 years working with our unhoused and vulnerable communities throughout the state of California, from the Bay to LA. And this is such critical work. You know, most of my time in my work history has been in the nonprofit sector. But even then, I never felt like it was solely government's job to solve homelessness and housing crisis. It's all of our role. We all have a role to play in that. And this is truly all hands on deck moment. You know, unprecedented times with this pandemic, with the needs of our unhoused community and the work that we need to do to meet this moment. We also have an unprecedented level of investment and resources now at the table, with billions of dollars committed from the local, state, and federal level. And now we have the work that needs to be done to continue to move the needle by scaling models that work, while also entertaining new ideas and new opportunities for innovation on the work of homelessness and housing. So delighted to hear the presentations, continue exploring solutions. And, you know, everybody at the table, like I said, this is an all hands on deck moment and opportunity, and look forward to hearing what some of you have to share. So thank you, Eugene. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. So it's time now to hear from the hands that you're talking about. And these are the hands that are on deck, the 3 schools. Each team will have 10 minutes to present its project, followed by 5 minutes of Q&A with a member of the Chief Sustainability Officer Task Force for LA County. First up, is the Southern California Institute of Architecture, the SciArc team. Its project is titled Mega Micros, Small Housing on a Large Urban Scale for an Underserved Population. Professor Ramiro's Diaz-Granados is one of the team leads. Ramiro, thank you very much for being here. Over to you.
Great, thank you. Thanks everyone for organizing. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So just to provide a quick background, so I'm the coordinator for the studio. It's the third year undergraduate studio. This is the third year we've done housing. We've taken on housing as a problem, specifically in LA. This year we had a huge class, 68 students, shared by 6 instructors. And so what we've done was we've selected a project from each section or each instructor that tackles the same program across different sites in Los Angeles. And it's not so much that we dealt with homelessness, but really about a mix of housing, including affordable housing, and the role of housing in the shaping of the city. So I also want to thank the students because they submitted work a week and a half before their final. So their final is next week. So they're in the midst of kind of producing their stuff. So the work that I'm going to show from them is a work in progress, and I'm just showing samples of what their proposals are. But first, I'd like to start off with just giving a kind of background of housing historically that kind of set up the studio for us. Okay, so I'm going to show kind of pairings of different projects that we looked at. In 1972, the same year that the infamous housing project, Pruitt-Igoe in St. Louis, Missouri, shown here on the right, was demolished, Robin Hood Gardens, a modernist housing project in East London on the left, opened with renewed optimism only to meet the same fate just a few years ago. Both projects were publicly funded, or shall we say underfunded. What has been deemed a failure of modern architecture is now known to be a more complex failure of policy, funding, imagination, and will. During that same time period, but in different cities, other architects had different ideas about housing in relationship to the city. Walden 7 in Barcelona on the left discards the garden city ideal and turns inward, providing a private sanctuary for the individual. Habitat 67 in Montreal on the right provides a semi-private garden for each unit. Both of these buildings have stood the test of time and are highly desirable places to live, which has only driven their rental prices upward, moving them from affordable to luxury residential. Separated by almost half a century, these two projects employ prefabricated micro-units as an answer to a changing city. The Nakagin Capsule Tower in Tokyo was a proposal for an aggregated tower of units that can adapt and be replaced over time. Carmel Place in New York, on the right, is a response to the market and skyrocketing construction and rental costs. Both offer a way to increase density within the limited urban space we have. These different scales, the large singular, the medium several, and the micro many, are part of an architect's repertoire in organizing housing and its relationship to the city. In advocacy for the micro, in 2018, the Central City Association of Los Angeles produced a white paper making the case for micro units in downtown LA. What's noteworthy in one of their surveys is that parking, a sense of community, and amenities are low on the scale of priorities of people who would live in micro units. Location, privacy, and proximity to public transportation are more important. They make the case to developers that micro units can demand a higher rent per square foot, and make the case to the city that properties near public transportation should relax, if not eliminate, parking requirements. So we believe that everyone deserves decent, if not exceptional, design. This requires political will to intervene in market forces and provide long-term subsidies. Given the various policies, socioeconomics, histories, and typologies of housing, the studio asks a daunting question. How can housing as urban fabric reimagine the city and the nebulous relationships between the individual dweller and the collective citizenry? What constitutes the shared space that connects the scalar range in between? We prepared a modest program that mixes unit types, shared spaces, and reduced parking requirements, a program developed in collaboration with the Venice Community Housing Corporation. And we tested it on 6 different sites across Los Angeles. All sites are within a transit-oriented tier. In Venice Beach, Rachel proposes a pair of housing bars containing a variety of unit types that twist and elevate over a public plaza and is punctuated by common areas and light retail on the ground. At the edge of Culver City, where towers are beginning to reshape the skyline, Zaman, Luke, and Holland propose a residential tower of aggregated units that are disrupted by large blocks of shared program which are vertically linked via public circulation routes. Sited next to the elevated expo line, the tower configuration offers a range of stacked shared spaces with multiple vantage points to view the emerging skyline. At the northern edge of Skid Row, Abdul and Dogukan insert a thickened and folded urban fabric to create a semi-open elevated urban space. The folded structure is organized by a pair of glazed common area volumes that also perform as a primary armature for the building, including circulation. The sloped quality of the roof line registers a change in scale from one end to the other against the backdrop of the existing urban fabric. The armature element extends over to become a large tilted urban canopy. At the base level, typical studio units are laid out along a double-loaded corridor on the alley side, with unique units spilling out towards Main Street and creating village-like pockets of shared outdoor space. In the vertical portion, the building is interrupted by the cores and common areas that look out over the village below and across towards Main Street. In Chinatown, Omid and Maria sampled the existing alleyways as an inspiration for organizing a compact and low building that performs as a cluster of neighborhoods and is partially contained by a translucent screen around the perimeter. The screen offers a sense of privacy, but is punctuated at moments to allow the external urban space to seep through and connect with the project's internal alleyways. In the Arroyo Seco area, where the Gold Line, LA River, and Fry freeways converge, and which is being rezoned as an urban village, Rita and Yue propose 2 pairs of leaning housing structures that rest on a new elevated ground which covers surface parking, light retail, and connects to an existing small public garden that also functions as a secondary rainwater diverter into the river. A mix of units are organized along double-loaded corridors where the slabs meet with circulation that spills out as they slip past each other, offering different views of the city, river, and nearby hills. The main corner, where the existing ground meets the new elevated ground, functions as a public plaza with the building serving as an urban backdrop. On the backside, the artificial ground is sunken from the housing area for security and joins with the existing public garden with an amphitheater-like sitting area. The buildings lean into or away from the complex contextual fabric and public spaces that surround them. In Highland Park, Jessica and Matthew distribute a cluster of chamfered housing blocks that are organized around and within a public ground that connects the Gold Line to the northwest with Figueroa to the southeast. Each cluster has its own shared as well as private outdoor spaces. This connection is marked by a change in elevation with the Gold Line about 2.5 stories above Figueroa. As the public circulation spills through, a series of open spaces permeate the new ground. We hope that these projects stimulate the public's imagination for the possibilities of housing and its role in the shaping of a vibrant city. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. That was,
Should I keep sharing screen?
no, it's fine. We'll go
Okay.
right now to Mark Spears, who's with the CSO Task Force, and Mark will be the respondent. Mark, I should say, by way of introduction, is a founding member of the task force, has been key to the development of Pando Days. He's the former CSO of Disney. Mark, over to you. Mark, you'll have 5 minutes here for Q&A.
Thank you, Eugene. And thank you all for attending. A big thank you to Deputy Mayor Ramirez for his leadership and encouragement in this work, and Professor Diaz-Granados, really an inspiring collection of work by you, the other professors and the students. So much to look forward to, and really such a big issue, particularly as we think about homelessness and how it might integrate into the concepts that you're presenting. Let me ask kind of a compound series of questions, and you can choose, which and how you want to answer. One of the challenges we've obviously faced in terms of providing adequate homeless housing in LA and LA County is the cost, both of the real estate and the development. We also are dealing with the not in my backyard kind of conditions in various neighborhoods, and then certainly the human transition factor from the street to housing. Certainly from a cost perspective, $500,000 to $750,000 per unit has been a big hurdle, but that has also been broken through in recent days with the development of the tiny home villages projects that are opening up across LA County. As you think about the work that you presented, particularly as it addresses the underserved and the underhoused community, how do you think about that community integration, the cost perspective of development, and maybe most importantly, the human factor of transitioning homeless to housing, perhaps the integration of a variety of communities within that housing? Are those the kinds of factors that went into the design?
I would say more the consideration of how housing as kind of fabric would contribute to the making of neighborhoods in that sense. I mean, the cost question is an interesting one, and something that we researched and looked into, and something that I learned in working on this studio for the past few years is both, and part of the reason why I showed the kind of historical references is, in the early 20th century, public funded housing, and why I called it underfunded, and the reason why those projects failed ultimately is that there wasn't adequate funding, not just for the construction and the design, but for maintenance afterwards. And so that the rift between private development and public funding, I think, is one that needs to really get addressed. Secondly, the role of micro units, something that was also learned, is even the initial solution of micro units. Sorry, background noise. There's someone blowing leaves in the background if you hear that. Micro units has been around for a bit more in other cities, more than LA. And what was fascinating to learn was that in the initial kind of idea of reducing rental costs through micro units, in some cities like Seattle and San Francisco, the demand for them became higher than normal apartments, so developers just increased the rent. So in many cases, micro units, even though smaller, were demanding higher rents than typical apartments because of lifestyle choice. So if there's no kind of interceding of market forces, even if you reduce construction cost, if they become desirable, then the market's just going to adapt to that and change that. So that's something that was kind of really disconcerting, and you're not sure what to do about that. But I think the role of housing in terms of producing neighborhoods and a kind of quality urban life, I think was more part of our agenda.
Fantastic. I think we're going to run out of time here. So many questions on this, particularly the human factor. And you also mentioned public policy, which I'm sure our good deputy mayor is working to help resolve when it comes to transportation, parking, et cetera. But thank you so much. Quite inspirational. Look forward to seeing some of this move forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you both. Okay. Next up is USC, University of Southern California. Their project, Urban Cooling, Bringing Climate Justice to Skid Row. The team is led by Professors Allison Hirsch and Jared McKnight, and will be represented here today by key team members. Zara Rizvi will get the team started. Over to you.
Hello, everyone. Today, Andrea Benz, Laura Lebeco, Eva Millis, and I, Zara Rizvi, are a part of USC's graduate program in Landscape Architecture and Urbanism team, led by Jared Edgar McKnight with faculty advisor Allison Hirsch. We'll be addressing the intersection of climate and housing crisis as they manifest in Skid Row through the following three parts: the challenge, the need, and the solution. The project considers the human experience of condition and policies in Skid Row to design urban cooling strategies focused on both climate justice and community resiliency. Today, LA County is experiencing a humanitarian crisis of 66,000 plus unhoused individuals. While permanent supportive housing must remain an unwavering goal, the reality is that the need is growing faster than the capacity. So adequate housing for LA will take years to achieve, and hence the need for interim strategies. Out of the 60,000, 6,000 people are concentrated in Skid Row, and this number continues to rise. Limited access to shade, clean water, and air-conditioned spaces puts the health and the well-being of unhoused individuals in serious jeopardy. Over the past 4 years, LA has seen a steady increase in the number of heat-related deaths in summer. Although extreme heat often takes place out of sight and out of news, it is quietly the nation's leading climate-related killer. This project responds to a number of Los Angeles County's R-County Regional Sustainability Plan goals, asserting that including the unhoused community in these goals is paramount. Building off Jared McKnight's master's thesis last year, it is important to be mindful and sensitive when dealing with urban spaces to ensure physical interventions do not exacerbate the criminalization of unhoused by municipal codes that restrict so much of everyday life in Skid Row. Our design choices affect well-being. Moreover, policies that oppress or ignore human health impacts, such as low tree canopy and poor air quality, actually compound into health issues such as heart diseases, asthma, and diabetes, which triggers serious morbidity risk during extreme heat. The LA Mayor's office had begun to successfully pilot 4 cooling stations that address these issues, but were unfortunately decommissioned, leaving a need for additional measures to maintain and expand the support to adequately address the needs of Skid Row residents.
Our project imagines an expanded cooling station network in Skid Row that has the capacity to better support and provide relief for those who occupy it. From the city's existing pilot process, we've captured the key considerations to help streamline decision-making for designing cooling interventions. We've put together a cooling strategy toolkit called the Cool Tool to guide the design of cooling stations. In designing these cooling stations, community collaboration and participation in the design process are key to incorporate every step of the way. In order to center the 24 experience of houselessness, cooling station design should center the community's needs. The Cool Tool pictured here is a decision-making framework that will help agencies like the City of LA and community organizations bring climate justice to the unhoused community. We've laid out all the important things to consider when designing cooling stations and climate justice solutions for the unhoused. The first step in designing a cooling station is to identify potential partnerships and who you want to invite to the table. The second step is to identify goals and priorities for your station. Third, we offer a budget framework to help track and guide costs as specific features are planned. The largest cost that the city found in their pilot program was staffing, since they provided jobs at a living wage for 24/7 staffing of their stations. Next is to look at what services you want to offer at your cooling station, such as thermal comfort, cooling, heating, providing drinking water, and device charging. You also want to consider the existing conditions and site selection considerations, especially code restrictions such as Section 4118 and 5611. Next, you can determine how much space is available and where you would like to place your cooling station. It's also important to consider how permanent and seasonal your cooling station will be. What kinds of staff roles will your station need? And lastly, incorporating community feedback and input along every step of the process.
So, what would it look like to deploy the Cool Tool strategy? As part of a week-long workshop, University of Southern California students were paired together with partner organizations in Skid Row, including the Downtown Women's Center, Los Angeles Poverty Department, Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles, and the Los Angeles Community Action Network. After an introduction and discussion with representatives from the Mayor's Office of City Homelessness Initiatives, urban planning experts, and community leaders, teams hit the ground at Skid Row to learn from community members and to explore opportunities. Based on these experiences, each team created a site-specific proposal. In the following slides, you'll see how the Cool Tool guides decision-making at each site, resulting in a unique emphasis based on the needs expressed by that community. At the first site, the team imagined an extended safe space with programs that focus on women's health and well-being by working with the Downtown Women's Center and pillar of the community, Stephanie Arnold Williams. Collaboration with the DWC extends their social enterprise and job training programs into the greater community. These priorities manifested as modular systems that adapt across seasons and build on site assets, including existing community infrastructure established by Williams. On East 5th Street, Team 2 and the Los Angeles Poverty Department elevate the power of visual and performing arts as a means of activism in Skid Row. Local artists are employed to collaboratively design expressive multi-benefit spaces. In coordination with LAPD and the neighboring LA Mission, staff provide round-the-clock access to site-specific services. Permanent, customizable shade structures in key locations along the sidewalk support residents and local services with a flexible, repeatable module made with durable and inexpensive materials that can evolve with the needs of the community around San Julian Park. Site 3 transformed a few parking spaces into a permanent parklet adjacent to the Los Angeles Community Action Network, expanding their community organizing and gathering space. A unique terracotta cylinder and misting cooling system provides relief from the elements and a feeling of enclosure and safety. Site 4 builds on the work of the Refresh Spot, run by Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles, creating a welcoming, large-scale community space across the street at the location of a former city cooling station. A unique origami-like shade structure adapts the site to all seasons and weather conditions. And finally, Site 5 coordinated with Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles' Harm Reduction Center, which specializes in addiction services. The team understood the need for safe places to exist, and that vegetation and seating is a basic dignity all streetscapes should provide for their residents. This site developed a budget-conscious, modular, prefabricated approach with options for quick installations such as tents and supply bins that can extend to adaptable or longer-lasting features like hydrant showers, water fountains, and street parklets.
So for our final 3 slides, we scale back from the solutions to the bigger picture of our approach. Housing and climate solutions have been on the policy radar for decades, but are a big ship to turn. Los Angeles and California have attempted multiple interventions, but these top-down solutions get stuck in red tape. For example, 5 years after approving $1 billion to build 10,000 affordable homes, very few have been built. stuck in permitting, neighborhood resistance, construction delays, and escalating costs. On the contrary, this toolkit flips the solution, moving resources from top down to bottom up. The difference is collaboration with community partners, developing flexible solutions to meet immediate needs. This bottom-up approach is drastically more cost-effective when implemented through the local level. LA County spends about $6,000 per unhoused resident per month at $400 to $4,000 per individual service. Comparatively, the cooling stations cost roughly $23 per resident per month, or less than $3 per service. The cost of providing new housing is more than $500,000 per unit and takes about 5 years at least, while the operating costs of cooling stations were roughly $125 per square foot and take only a few months to create. This cool tool framework streamlines the best practices and expertise from the cooling stations to a practical guide to empower communities to provide for residents faster and more efficiently. The foundation of this model is complete. The next steps would be to formalize the toolkit to roll out multiple stations within Skid Row as a fully funded year-round cooling network pilot. The tool has potential to scale beyond not just Skid Row, but across LA and other cities as well. Temperatures are rising. We want to empower communities to address the nexus of climate and housing vulnerabilities compassionately, effectively, and immediately. In closing, we want to thank our amazing partners, students, community advisors, and USC for their dedicated time and guidance. We are here to amplify their voices as community leaders advocating for real, immediate social and climate justice action in LA and Skid Row. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, USC. Fascinating, intriguing presentation. So we're bringing into the conversation CSO Task Force member Claire Robinson to serve as a respondent. Many of you know Claire as the founding head of the organization Amigos de los Rios. She's an architect by training from Cooper Union and taught at prestigious schools over many years. Claire, you have 5 minutes. You probably have 50 minutes worth of questions, but go for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, for one thing, thank you very much to the whole team for such a thoughtful and practical set of action items. I love that. I think, as Eugene mentioned, a lot of these things we want to move forward into reality. And the most recent update from the Biden team in terms of the Build It Back Better contains $2.5 billion for tree equity. And so it seems to me that a lot of what you're talking about depends on a city having excellent natural infrastructure in terms of regional hubs. You know, you're looking at the mini space along the sidewalk. I think these spaces can be seen in conjunction with action required at various scales, like having larger parks throughout the city distributed within every half mile that someone could go and cool down within a bigger tree canopy within more of a living room setting and the other services you mentioned. That would complement really well the stations on the sidewalks. And equal, you know, in importance is like sort of pocket parks or mini, imported from Japan, mini forests, where you get the complexity of within a teeny little tenth of an acre, all the benefits of a forest. So it does cost some time rather than so much money to get a tree going, but part of what this is pointing out to me in the combination of spaces for children or women, spaces for art to really take hold, spaces for the parklet, the origami kind of modular pieces, is maybe to eventually combine some of these together and really elicit the power of creating nurturing spaces where you could sit and feel dignified. And a shade tree, working with City Plants, a group that has been very effective with the city of LA for years, really looking at accelerating some of the tree well cutting and planting in areas where people need the shade most. There's nothing like a tree to provide shade in combination with the shade structures, because sometimes the trees take some time with the broad leafy canopy to do their shade work. but temperature differentials that we've counted in under shade versus, black pavement are on the order of like 40 to 50 degrees difference. And the other thing that I might recommend as part of the toolkit is some cool pavement, just painting. Some of these are kind of experimental, but painting a lighter color onto the surface of the sidewalk where you're working to reduce the ability of the masonry to really absorb heat and throw it back off. Painting different colors that have the ability to reflect and not absorb heat. But I guess in general, my question to you all would be, it sounds like you actually piloted some of these things. Where would you like to go next? Because I think these are imminently doable, and you could get a number of partners, including city plants and other urban forestry groups. Who are some of the partners you're thinking about moving forward with, and what are your next steps?
Thank you so much for all these comments, Claire. We're really interested in the full spectrum of strategies and tools that are available to help address this issue from all angles. I'll also mention that we have another extensive document that's detailing all of these projects even further, so we can look even more in depth at those strategies. As for the next steps, I think the person best poised to answer that question would be Jared.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've been really invested in this work for a long time, and I love the idea that you mentioned about kind of incorporating tree canopy into this, because it's such an integral piece of it. And part of our continued and ongoing discussion is really trying to weigh these sort of goals against a lot of the municipal codes in Los Angeles that actually do criminalize unhoused individuals for their existence in our streetscapes, understanding that even in the course of this kind of few-month project, there's been a sweeping overhaul of Code 4118 and actually sort of excluding unhoused individuals from existing within 500 feet of a park space. So how do we begin to really rationalize that aspect of this process and really understand what that means on the ground level? So that's why you maybe haven't seen a lot of trees in the proposals right now. We've been looking at other opportunities, but in terms of sort of those partnerships moving forward, I think our biggest goal is to really find those synergies between organizations that are doing work sort of in the realm of sustainability, looking at kind of urban forestry projects and all of that, but really meaningfully pairing those with community organizations who are on the ground in Skid Row serving this community. I think that's been kind of the core and sort of the heart of the work that we're doing. And our team has been on the ground in Skid Row, and we actually took our entire department there during our week-long workshop to learn from these organizations, meet the community, and hear their needs. So an actionable next step for us is really continuing this process and designing a community engagement platform that can begin to engage Skid Row residents, those organizations that are really working on sustainability goals, and pairing them with sort of the City of Los Angeles, the Mayor's Office of Homeless Initiatives, and also the organizations and nonprofits on the ground in Skid Row, because we really see these as multi-benefit solutions that can not only provide urban cooling, but also meet basic needs for unhoused individuals until the time housing solution can be developed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Claire. And thank you, USC. Fascinating. Okay. Our final presentation today is from Woodbury University with Mobile Cooling Rooms of Los Angeles, employing an ancient technology in a modern application. Professor Berenika Boberska leads the team. Berenika, welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. So before I share my slides, we wanted to make a little demonstration. This is a ceramic form that we've made, and we're just gonna wet it, and we're gonna measure the temperature difference at the end of the presentation in 10 minutes. It's not exactly a perfect condition because it's freezing cold in Burbank today. The hotter it is, the more differentiation we have. So let me just set up my slides. So mobile cooling rooms for Los Angeles. So extreme heat, as we've heard already, is radically changing our cities and the environments of our cities. And it's radically changing Los Angeles and its streets. So it's likely, because of climate change, to become more extreme and hotter and drier. And it's actually going to be dangerous to be outside for any extended amount of time during the summer, the height of the summer in Los Angeles. So it radically changes our understanding of urban space as well. Now we are able now to map these heat islands, and from that we are able to see how this extreme urban heat is actually very unevenly distributed in the geography of the city, from the point of view of communities, income brackets, even race and things like that. So we are seeing a sort of a polarization as well. And it is the urban streets that are becoming unlivable and dangerous. And we've seen, especially the homeless population suffer from heat-related illness and death. So this is a very urgent situation, and just overlaying maps of the cooling centers sort of really shows this quite strange amount of, very low amount of cooling centers near Los Angeles, which is where we need them most, near the downtown Skid Row. And these are also places not dedicated to the idea of unmateriality of cooling. They just happen to be lobbies in public buildings where perhaps the homeless don't feel a kind of a true welcoming and dedicated space. So our project becomes quite monastic, as in we wanted to just zoom into a very specific thing, the cooling aspect, as the most urgent, perhaps, intervention, employing an ancient technology to Los Angeles, a very sort of fast-forward contemporary city, and sort of devising almost a new typology of external rooms for the sidewalks, for the streets of LA. And LA is fast becoming the global South. And so we thought the best way to do this is to learn from others, from other geographies with whom we are now sharing the same extremes. So indigenous technologies, ancient and contemporary, especially in the Middle East. This is a terracotta jar in Egypt used to keep water cool for drinking. But there's also something quite ingenious about using these gula jars in the windows where the breeze sort of goes around them. And it becomes a sort of very, very low tech, very ingenious way of basically air conditioning the space. So evaporation from porous jars of water in windows. This is also expanded in the Middle East with cooling towers. In India, terracotta is used also on roofs for the same purpose, walls. These are some contemporary applications of similar things that we've done, of terracotta tubes that are sort of sprinkled with water and the air blows through them. So just some examples from other parts of the world. Also, just anything, these are very inventive kind of low-cost things, anything that allows air to go through it and has a lot of surface area for water evaporation will bring down the temperature by several tens of degrees. But we've realized that it's also part of materiality that's important, and feeling. So we wanted to look at materials that are much more sort of not transient, not temporary, or still cheap, but not something to be discarded. Mainly because of the psychology of being outside, living on the street. So we wanted to sort of elevate the materiality of it. So we chose to work with ceramics, low fire or bisque fired clays with high porosity, which have a sponge-like microscopic structure. So it works very much like sweating, and the evaporative cooling that happens is most dramatic when it's actually super dry and super hot, which is what happens during the heat waves in Los Angeles. So up to 11 degrees Celsius, I'm sorry, I didn't translate that, but it's quite a radical drop. And we've got a sensor here that we can actually test at the end of the day, at the end of the presentation. So the design process, the more surface articulation, and I can kind of show our first sketches, the more surface articulation there is, the more chance of water evaporating with the wind going through. And these are ceramics that we've kind of cast ourselves, that we've fired ourselves so we kind of took inspiration from nature in sort of dividing up the surfaces to something quite elaborate. This is a 3D printed sample, which is maybe something we will use in the end for sort of manufacturing these units. But we played initially by hand to sort of get a feel for these ceramic forms suspended in a structure. So I'm just going through the process. This is very much like dough and stretching it stretching the clay on a press, and then cutting it and molding it into these vessel-like shapes. And these are fired now. So all of these are now fired forms that are meant to capture a flow of water and absorb it, and then gradually evaporate it. So ceramics are quite strange animals. So they don't actually. Oh, let's look at this one. So this is the one that we've been dunking in water just for 30 seconds at a time. It is dry to the touch, although very cold. So it's not wet. So that's quite important. Everything gets absorbed inside, and you only need to switch on the sprinkler system 3 times a day for 5 minutes and no more. So very little water goes a long way. And these are just some of the sort of textures we've been exploring, how to increase water absorption. So we've become quite obsessed with this technology, but hopefully it offers a sort of a system to use. This is an extrusion. So an extrusion can make these tubes, and these can be collected into clusters. So some of these things are replicable. And of course, how do you channel water through them? And so we've kind of devised a system where the water distribution is actually part of the suspension of the ceramic forms. So this is just process. And here's the final piece. And choosing a very simple one, how do you suspend that in a structure? So very simply, it's like a kind of a timber trellis with metal tubes that suspend these vessels, and the metal tubes carry the sprinkler system or a mister system, which is just switched on 3 times a day or maybe 4 at the height of summer. And the rest is up to passive evaporation. So this wall unit is 3 ceramic vessel thick, and each ceramic is maybe a foot in length. It's important to build depth because that's how there's most contact between the ceramic and the air. And so these are systems, and we're imagining each wall to be 10 foot high, 10 foot long, full of these vessels, and they stack together tightly like books, but hinge open. And so each one of these hinge systems can combine with another to make a room, to make an enclosure that can actually vary or combine to form larger spaces as needed. So something like that could fit in one of those maybe parking places, plus 1/3 of a pavement, or a leftover space. Or we'll need to look for nooks and crannies, and so we really enjoyed the previous presentation of USC because that's really what we need to do next. So it was very inspirational. We've realized that we need to do that. But a proposal for future development. So we just want to test the system and let the system be changed by what's needed. We have some ideas of what uses would go in there because these are rooms. We think it's important, the psychology of a room. So a library room, a cooling porch, a reading room, a shade pavilion, yeah, of course, but rooms are more intimate, right? So maybe it's a place to play chess just between 2 people. So it's about this sort of temporary domesticity, perhaps. So construction of a full-scale prototype. We would love to do all this. We have a very small team here, but a very dedicated one. And we're lucky to have here at Woodbury, that's why we're in this place, 2 kilns and 3D printing of clay. And of course, Joshua Stein, who's kind of looking after this facility here, is helping us look at digital ceramics as well, although all of these are handmade as research. So these are the resources that we have at Woodbury. We've tried to put prices on things, but it's a sort of a moving target. We hope to make a room. We hope to make a room and figure out how much this really costs. These are very cheap materials. The ceramic clay is super cheap, so is timber. It's just how to kind of do the most expensive thing is the water system, but it's a very standard misting system for a garden or a restaurant. And it uses very little water, as we found out. So anyway, that's our proposition. And yeah.
Veronica, thank you so much. I'm sitting here thinking how remarkable it is how these 3 presentations started out so broadly and then have increasingly narrowed down in a wonderfully choreographed way, though unintentional from my standpoint. But anyway, thank you all. Craig Ryder, Senior Director, Sustainability and Energy for LA Metro. Craig, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure you have questions. So if you can do just 3 or 4 minutes of those, that'd be great.
Sure. Thank you, Eugene. Veronica, and Woodbury team, I can see you're all very passionate about this technology. Quite exciting. And I'd like to see all 3 of the school's projects come together, because it seems like they all could work off each other. As Eugene mentioned, my questions kept changing as the discussion went on, the presentation went on, because you kept laying out more details about it. But I would like to better understand, like, how, you talked about the idea of the cooling room and the potential for, I think in many ways that would kind of demo the technology, but how you could look at marketing isn't exactly the right word, but more mass producing that, so that it's something that is out that could potentially, kind of in USC's presentation, something that could be at each individual location and potentially be able to provide cool air in conjunction with other features to reduce the heat impacts. Have you thought about how you would take it from a demonstration of a cool room to a wider spread availability for others?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think that's, honestly, that is the next step. But I think one has to have, with something like this, first a demonstration that this is possible, and this is possible cheaply, and this is possible with materials that don't look cheap, that are beautiful, that are, perhaps elevating a certain sort of stigma of street furnishings or street infrastructure for those who live on the streets. So we felt that we needed to demonstrate this first, but we are aware, especially after USC's presentation, and we knew that we need to differentiate these and sort of find not only sites, but groups to work with to infect the system with a need or a function within. We have some ideas, but these are really very spatial constructs that need partnerships with perhaps people who already work in Skid Row, as we know, but also with the city for locations, because I think this prototype offers also other uses when it's not summer, when it's a day like this. These could provide other things because of their mobility, and perhaps the way they feel can actually be in parks like the Gladys Park, and can actually serve other functions than cooling. So we were thinking of it as a kind of a gift to the streets of Los Angeles that can be used in summer by the homeless community, but then perhaps at other times for other functions, for creating maybe public spaces. So this is still a system that needs partnership, that needs the infection of differentiation and things like that. We were thinking about fabrics for the roof and other things and details that, you know, there is a mobile table, there is a sort of an element that is crafted. I think what we wanted to bring to this discussion is the idea of hand and craft again, because a lot of the solutions tend to look fast and or tend to have materialities that speak of sort of discardability or other things. So I don't know. We wanted to attack it from a different angle, and hopefully to find through this community as well, to find partnerships to develop this further, to plug in with others, to collaborate. So yes, we know that, yeah, we were very obsessed with providing a kind of a system. Yeah.
Well, I know we're out of time, Eugene. I just want to say, it is a tried and tested, technology, the use of clays for cooling, and you have a very functional opportunity here to provide, a solution for this. And so I wouldn't overthink the aesthetic part of it, and just know that you're headed on the right path. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you again, Veronica. Deputy Mayor, let's go back to you. You have watched many of these projects in development, and you've seen the presentations this afternoon. Do you have any final words? Are you encouraged?
Hey everyone, and sorry I had to jump off camera for a quick minute. We do have a busy encampment and home operations today that we're also managing, bringing people indoors safely. But yeah, this was great to hear everyone's input and feedback on opportunities and ideas and solutions. I definitely welcome that we all continue the conversation. I think there's a lot of opportunity right now to continue building and expanding not only models that work, but entertaining new ideas in this work. And so I'm going to put my email in the chat also, if any of you would like to reach out and engage and continue the conversation, connecting with council offices. Homelessness is front and center, homelessness and housing, especially this upcoming year, which will be a very politically charged year, where you got 8 council seats up for grabs. You have a mayor's role, the city controller, city attorney. So, I think all eyes and energy will be invested in the conversation, and that's important and key. And I think also with the influx of resources at the state and federal level, with even the recent news of a potential $30 billion surplus from the state, to continue advocating collectively for how those resources should be invested. Also, who's at the table to make those decisions around how the resources should be invested. I think that's been my privilege, is to build one of the most diverse homelessness initiatives teams that we've ever seen, with folks with lived experience, with diversity in their professional and personal journeys through this work. And this is just an amazing moment to really bring everybody in collectively. And as I said earlier, truly all hands on deck moment, from the public sector, the private sector, nonprofit sector, academic sector, and just really, really being engaged to move the needle. And we have this opportunity now like never before. In some ways, the silver lining, I guess, of the pandemic, that unfortunately it took a pandemic to see kind of this FEMA-like response with what we need to really recalibrate, look through the equity lens of how we build housing, how we are addressing our homelessness crisis throughout this state and this country. And so I really appreciate the time and energy from everybody today, and hope we get some chance to talk again as we move forward, and maybe even work in some of these ideas into our upcoming local budget. We're budget season right now, preparing for next fiscal year. So it's a good opportunity to reflect on what's possible.
Deputy Mayor, thank you so much again, not only for joining us today, but for working with us all throughout the whole of the Pando Days 21 process. We look forward to seeing you at the finale in January. Many thanks to the schools who have dedicated full courses, studios, or labs over the fall term to create their Pando Days submissions, to their professors, to the students, the ones who will inherit the future we're building. Many thanks to the CSOs who've joined us today. Many thanks to the co-executive producer, Judith Parker, event producer, Shelley Goldstein, and to the entire Pando Days team. Make sure any of you go to our website, pandopopulous.com, to see all the school project descriptions and to read through their presentation materials. Those are going up on a rolling basis and will be posted throughout the week. Pando Days was conceived with the help of the CSO Strategic Task Force and made possible by the Conrad N. Hilton Foundation. Make sure to join us tomorrow, where we're focused on community, the location, Pico Union. With us tomorrow are Cal Arts, LA Trade Tech, and Otis College of Art and Design. I've had a preview and know they're doing fascinating work as well. Don't miss. Thank you again for joining us and have a great rest of your afternoon.